you're looking to dive into topics on how to live a happier, healthier, more fit, and long lifespan, then you've come to the right podcast. Livin the Dream with me, Coach Damian Evans. Together, we will explore the topics on all things health, fitness, and wellness. Together, we will be lifelong learners on this journey to living the ultimate dream. What up, Dream Team? Coach D here, coming at you from beautiful sunny San Diego, and welcome back to the Livin the Dream Podcast. And today, we are throwing it back. On Throwback Thursday, we dive into some of the best episodes from the archives, packed with timeless strategies to help you crush your health, fitness, and wellness goals. These episodes might be from the past, but the lessons still hit hard today. Whether it's a mindset shift, a fitness tip, or a nutrition hack, this throwback is here to remind you just how far you've come and how much further you can go. And in today's Throwback Thursday episode, we're reaching into the vault to revisit one of the most downloaded, most talked about, and most mind-blowing episodes that we've ever dropped. And if you're new here, trust me, be prepared. You might have some of your core beliefs challenged in this episode. We're going to dive deep on why steady state cardio might actually be holding you back from your fat loss goals. What is steady state cardio and why it might be holding you back from your fat loss goals? And I know that treadmill time or that long distance run, it might feel productive, but what if I told you it could be sabotaging your results? In this episode, I break down the common myths around cardio for fat loss, the science behind how your body actually adapts to different types of training, and why resistance training and something called NEAT, non-exercise activity thermogenesis, might be the secret weapons that you're missing, and what you should be focusing on instead to finally start burning that stubborn body fat. We also discuss the fat burning zone and why it might be a myth. We talk about how your body is an adaptation machine. We discuss the truth about HIIT training and weight training. And we talk about building a plan that actually works for your lifestyle, not against it. So whether you're a seasoned listener or you're just finding this podcast, this is one of those episodes that hits different. And I want to bring it back because the principle still holds true today. And honestly, this might be the reminder that you didn't know you needed. So buckle up, get ready to challenge some of your old beliefs, and lean in, because this is an episode that might change the way that you train forever. Let's roll the episode. What up, team? Coach D here, coming at you from beautiful sunny San Diego. And today we are going to be discussing the topic of why doing steady state cardio is terrible for your fat loss goals. Yes, that's right. The thing that people have been convinced that will save them from their excess eating and ever-increasing sedentary lives, it is not helping you with your fat loss goals, and it could quite possibly be taking you further away from being comfortable in your own skin. But before we get to the topic of the day, I want to start by thanking the sponsor of this podcast. The podcast is brought to you by Lululemon. Lululemon has some of the best athletic wear for both females and males. I pretty much only wear Lululemon. The quality of the material and the durability and breathability are perfect for my active lifestyle. Another one of our sponsors is Dirt Food. Dirt Food is healing and delicious superfoods made by hand and made with love. Dirt Food was created by a local San Diego friend of mine who was going through her battle with cancer and looking for cancer-fighting superfoods to help her defeat the 2 types of cancer that she had. She created a delicious and healthy superfood granola that she makes in small batches by hand in her kitchen. Visit eatdirtfood.com and use the discount code DirtyDamian for 10% off your entire purchase. I eat it every single night, and I get it auto-shipped to my door on a monthly subscription. That's Dirty Damien, DirtyDamien, no space. Discount code Dirty Damien for 10% off your entire order. And now on to the topic of the day. So for today, we're going to talk about why steady state cardio is terrible for fat loss. If your goal is fat loss, what else you can be doing instead of grinding your body into the ground with miles and miles and miles of long, boring cardio. So first, let's talk about what is steady state cardio. Well, steady state cardio is maintaining a moderate aerobic intensity throughout the entire duration of your workout. For example, getting on a treadmill and setting the speed to 5 miles per hour and jogging for 30 minutes. Or you could get on a bike, choose 5 gears, and ride for 10 miles without changing pace or resistance. And aside from the warm up and the cool down of your workout, the intensity should be about 60 to 80% of your max heart rate the entire time. So the benefits of steady state cardio include improving your stamina and endurance. It increases your overall daily movement quite a bit, depending on the duration, of course, and it accommodates almost everyone. Beginners, deconditioned people, active aging, and all the way up to elite athletes can participate in steady state cardio. And they can do this fairly easy and without much prior training at all. Other benefits of steady state cardio include being a great form of active recovery from higher intense efforts, such as doing a high intensity interval training workout or having played in a pickup basketball game the previous day. Steady state cardio is also great if you plan on training for any long duration events, such as a half marathon, a Spartan race, triathlons, or any races of that nature. And one of my favorite reasons for doing steady state cardio is, of course, the psychological benefits of being able to be alone with your thoughts and giving yourself some much needed you time. It's a great way for moving meditation, de-stressing, and just getting some alone time with yourself. So what are some common forms of steady state cardio? Well, there's obviously jogging outside or on a treadmill, cycling on the road or a spin bike inside. You could do the elliptical, rowing, hill walking, swimming, climbing stairs, even dancing. The options are really limitless. If you're working at a perceived exertion of about 4 to 6 out of 10 for a prolonged period of time, you're probably experiencing steady state cardio in some form or another. So your body is an adaptation machine, right? The longer you do something, the better and more efficient your body and brain gets at performing this task. The longer you do aerobic training, the more the body adapts to being able to do that type of training with less amounts of work and more efficiency. Likewise, the longer you do resistance training, so when you're lifting weights, the more your body rebuilds muscle that is more resistant to that level of stress. So in order to overload that muscle, you must bring progressively more volume than the last time. The same thing applies for your aerobic training. Your body figures out how to consume more oxygen for the same amount of work, making it more efficient at its current task, which means that you either have to work for a longer period of time or a higher intensity to create an overload where change can occur. You can see where this could become a problem when you get very conditioned to steady state cardio. How much time do you have to run, bike, swim, or to progressively overload? 30 minutes turns into an hour. 1 hour turns into 2. It just depends on what your goal is and what is your why to investing that much time. Is it worth it to you? Now let's go over some other downsides of steady state cardio. Steady state cardio can be a little boring and monotonous since you're maintaining the same pace without any variation for a long period of time. Too much steady state cardio, especially at higher intensities, can lead to overtraining and result in muscle loss. For most people that do steady state cardio at a moderate to low intensity, it can be tough to burn enough calories to make a significant impact. People tend to think they are doing more than they actually are. For instance, in a 30-minute moderate intensity session, you might only burn 200 to 300 calories. Yet, when someone goes to the gym and jogs for a half hour or an hour on the treadmill, that's a huge accomplishment for many. And sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes people tend to say, hey, I was really good today. I went to the treadmill and I ran on the treadmill for a half hour or an hour, and I really deserve this ice cream after dinner tonight. Oh wait, the ice cream that you just ate was 500 calories, and now you just went into a calorie surplus just from the ice cream, even though you jogged for even up to an hour that day. And another one of the bigger downsides, in my opinion, is without perfect form, chronic joint and muscle pain or imbalances can occur. Even with perfect form, if you fatigue, your form breaks down, and that's going to invite chronic overuse injuries to happen. So injuries that I see from steady state cardio, I see it all the time. People come to me with these aches, these pains, these imbalances that have happened from months, if not years, of doing their favorite steady state cardio. And the impact from running and other chronic issues from steady state cardio is unfortunately fairly common. Let's talk about how the skeletal system receives repetitive impact while a person runs with incorrect form. I want you to picture on a micro scale, while you're running, what your ankle looks like. It's supposed to be a shock absorber. That's the goal and the job of the ankle. If you can land on the ball of your foot and you can absorb the shock from the impact of the ground, you're doing it with flexion and extension happening to cushion all the load at the ankle. Now, let's say that when your foot hits the ground, along with flexing and extending, it also rotates inward just a tiny bit. This is also known as pronation, which what that would look like is when the arch of your foot collapses towards the ground. And it doesn't have to be drastic. It can even be just a tiny bit. Now, the body is meant to bend, twist, rotate in all sorts of directions, right? It's a super resilient machine. However, what happens when you do this pronation every single step and you start to add impact with the higher speeds of jogging and running? Well, let's think about it. How many steps do you take in a mile? And then how many miles do you run in a month? Some people run multiple marathons a year just by going out and jogging every single day as to what they're using as their exercise. So now you take that small inward rotation of the ankle and you put thousands and thousands of tiny imperfect steps, and what will that do? Well, the knee has to make up for that small rotation. To keep everything in alignment, your knee now has to go aligned in the direction that it's not really meant to be, and it's even just a tiny 1 degree or 2 degrees off, all while experiencing the impact from the ground when the foot strikes the ground. Now, the knee joint is just the middleman between the ankle and the hip. So now the hip is imbalanced, and possibly one side is doing more than the other, or the muscles are imbalanced. And what will that do to the muscles that are supporting the hip, that are connected to the low back? Once the low back muscles are tweaked and possibly asymmetrical, now that mid-back and the neck muscles are all connected to that. So you can see how an imbalance all the way down at the ankle, multiplied by thousands of repetitive impact-filled movements, can travel all the way up the kinetic chain and create some massive problems over time. This can be applied to pretty much any form of steady-state cardio because you're spending lots of time doing the same repetitive motion for almost all of them. So with cycling, it's the hips, it's the hip flexors, it's the low back, the rounding of the shoulders. With swimming, it's the shoulders and the hips. Now, the body is meant to move, bend, and twist and rotate, but just like any machine, if you perform the movements incorrectly, out of alignment, and you repeat it for countless reps, and you add the impact that some of steady-state cardio forms have to offer, now you're just asking for chronic injuries to add up over time. Some people love the form of steady-state cardio that they're doing and understand the risk, just like a professional athlete who knows that the sport that they're doing is causing physical damage to their body and possibly their brain, but they're getting something out of it in return, so they're willing to make that sacrifice. However, a lot of people are just running, just biking, just swimming for fat loss, and this is when I have a serious issue doing steady-state cardio. Why does everyone think that steady-state cardio is the best thing for fat loss? Well, let's dive into it a little bit. If you go out and you ask a random group of people, what's the best thing to do for fat loss? I can almost guarantee you would get a majority of them saying cardio or running or something along those lines. It's crazy because we've been brought up to believe that if we want to lose body fat, I have to go out and I just have to run on a treadmill or run outside. Now, even the government and the American Heart Association suggest, quote, get at least 150 minutes per week of moderate intensity aerobic activity or 75 minutes per week of vigorous aerobic activity, or a combination of the both, preferably spread out throughout the week. And I have a serious problem with this. The recommendation is so outdated, and I can only imagine the process that it's going to take to get government and educational institutions to change their recommendations and their teachings to things that we have found to be more beneficial than just moderate or vigorous intensity aerobic activity. We can't always rely on others to tell us how to move and keep our bodies healthy. There is endless information out there, but some of it is old science and been proven either wrong or an inferior way to the other strategies, or it's a complete flat-out myth. You'll have people that are taking findings from studies that skew the statistics and help their purpose, and all that does is perpetuate false information, which in turn makes it harder for all of us to understand how to truly attack this issue. For example, it was once taught to us that there was this, quote, fat-burning zone. And if you stayed within this zone, you were burning a higher percentage of fat calories than you were burning carb calories. The standard advice for this was given that if you stayed around 60% of your max heart rate, which is just over half of what you're capable of, right? Your max heart rate can be found with a bunch of different ways, but the easiest way to do it is just to take 220 minus your age. It's definitely not accurate, but it gives you a general idea of what the average person's heart rate is. So for someone that's 40 years old, their max heart rate would be 220 minus 40, which is 180 beats per minute. Meaning if you were trying to get into this fat burning zone, you'd want to go 60% of that, around 108 beats per minute. And there is a tiny bit of substance to this claim that you burn a higher percentage of fat than carbs at 60% of your max heart rate. But this has been taken completely out of context. There are a few studies that came out and showed that at lower intensities, you were utilizing a higher percentage of fat than carbs. And as you worked out harder and your heart rate increased higher, you were shifting more towards a higher percentage of carbs than fat. Now, yes, this is found to be true. And so exercise machine producers got a hold of this information, and really they used it as a huge marketing strategy to sell their treadmills, their ellipticals, and other exercise equipments in the gyms and the homes. They put little charts on their equipment and little heart rate monitor readings on them, which are super inaccurate, but that's for another time. And here's the problem. So if I told you I was going to give you money, you can choose between me giving you 75% of $10 or a low 40% of $100. What would you choose? Now, I sure hope you would choose the lower percentage of the overall higher dollar amount, right? $750 is less than $40, a lot less. The same thing is happening here with exercise. Yes, the percentage of fat is higher at lower intensities, but the overall calories and energy expended is much lower. Let's think about it another way. If the key factor to losing weight was just being at the highest percentage of fat, then you would actually want to just be still and not move and do nothing, because this is when you are at the highest percentage of fat being burned relative to carbs. But we all know that being still is not going to help us get to lose this excess body fat that we put on. We've tried that. Sedentary lifestyle does not work. What people forget is that the food you eat that has grams of fat is different than the fat that you store in your body. That's actually called adipose tissue. It's not the same thing. Yes, fat grams that you put in your body can be stored as adipose tissue fat, but so can carbs, proteins, alcohol, and all the good stuff. Fat is not the bad guy. It's excess adipose tissue that is. So who cares if you're burning a higher percentage of fat than carbs? You're not burning a higher percentage of adipose tissue, which is what people really think when they hear this. So in my opinion, this is not how the average person should think. If they're just looking to lose a couple of lbs, you should be thinking a different way. Now, if you're a peak elite athlete or you're in a bodybuilding competition like a bikini or a bodybuilding show, then yes, maybe this information would be important for you to know how to train with. However, for most of us that are just wanting to lose a little body fat, look a little bit better naked, I think that there's a much way to go about this thing. Yes, if we were all robots, we could use the mathematical equation of eat less calories than you consume. If we all followed that, then we would be fine with our body composition. However, we are not robots. We're humans. We have these cravings. We have emotional ties to food and exercise. We have these hormones, ever-increasing sedentary lives and technology and inventions that allow us to use less energy to get whatever we want almost instantaneously with very little physical effort of our own to get it. We're not robots, and it's not that simple. As we all know, we're in an obesity epidemic, and our nation is getting fatter and fatter. This is just a fact. These recommendations of aerobic activity are not working. People who are over-consuming far too many calories and thinking that they're doing the right thing to counteract this by getting on a treadmill and running for 30 to 60 minutes every other day, some of us every single day, are getting so frustrated and wondering why they aren't seeing any results. And I can totally empathize with these people because it's what they're telling us to do. They're the experts, right? They should be knowing what to do and giving us the right answer. And I'm telling you right now, steady state cardio cannot keep up with all of our excess processed food intake. It's like in the Game of Thrones. If you're fighting the army of the dead, Yeah, you can build a castle. Yeah, you can light a moat on fire surrounding it. You can recruit armies of Unsullied and Dothraki, but they have zero chance against those numbers. And it's not even close. You must recruit yourself a few dragons and start killing off the army of the dead generals and the Night King, the big players, in order to win this game. Yes, I did just use a Game of Thrones reference because I'm a nerd like that. And if you haven't seen Game of Thrones, you'll have to trust me. You can't beat the army of the dead by doing steady state cardio. So I want to list off a few of the top burning calorie steady state cardio activities that you can do, along with some non-steady state cardio activities that burn less calories minute by minute. But I'll explain afterwards why those activities that burn less calories right then and there might be, if not most likely are, better activities to choose if your number one goal is fat loss, or as we should be saying, adipose tissue loss. There's a quick caveat here to this list and the calorie amount that I give. It's super general, right? There are so many variables that will take place when you come to calorie burn. Your age, your gender, your weight, your height, your effort level, previous training in that form of exercise, and if your body has adapted to it. The list could go on forever. So take the actual calorie amount with a grain of salt and just kind of listen to the hierarchy of the calorie burn per hour of each of these activities. So number one, running. At 8 miles per hour, if you can do that, you're burning up to 900 to 1,000 calories per hour. Number two, indoor cycling, up to 600 to 850 calories per hour. That is if you're holding 200 watts or higher. I don't know if you've ever been to a cycle class, but 200 watts or higher is not easy. So 600 to 850 calories if you're able to hold 200 watts or higher on an indoor cycling bike. Now, circuit training. If you do circuit training, you could burn up to 500 to 700 calories per hour. Jumping rope, number four, up to 500 to 650 calories per hour. Number five, rowing, an amazing exercise, up to 450 to 650 calories per hour. Swimming at a moderate intensity, as if you were going to go to the gym and just kind of swim laps, up to 400 to 600 calories per hour. That's great. Number seven, we're getting a little bit lower here, walking at 3 miles per hour. 250 to 350 calories per hour. So just walking 3 miles per hour, which is about the average pace of a person that's going out for a walk, 250 to 350 calories per hour. That's nothing compared to the running at 8 miles per hour of up to 900 to 1,000 calories per hour. And all the way down at the list at the bottom, you have weightlifting down here, 200 to 300 calories per hour, just lifting weights, 200 to 300 calories per hour. So if we look at this list and go back through, wouldn't a person want to look at the very top if they're looking to lose body fat and just pick the top one or two activities and do that every single day? Wouldn't that make the most sense if I did that activity that burned the most calories every single day? And each day, if I did that, I'd be crushing life and totally able to eat whatever I wanted and look fantastic with my shirt off. In fact, I would want to avoid the last couple of exercises because they're a waste of time, right? Walking, weightlifting, 200 to 350 calories per hour. Ain't nobody got time for those type of calorie burns. But hold on. I'm here to tell you that if you implemented the correct way, those last two items could be the most important items in your journey to losing excess body fat. If it were as easy as just jogging every day, then all of us would be on the cover of magazines by now. If it were only that simple, right? Let's quickly go over the difference between anaerobic exercise and aerobic exercise. So aerobic exercise is any type of cardiovascular conditioning. It includes activities like brisk walking, swimming, running, and cycling. You probably know it as cardio. By definition, aerobic exercise means with oxygen. Your breathing and heart rate will increase during aerobic activities. Now, anaerobic exercise is any activity that breaks down glucose for energy without using oxygen. Generally, these activities are very short in length and very high intensity. The idea is that a lot of energy is released within a small period of time, and your oxygen demand surpasses the oxygen supply. Now, when it comes to steady state cardio, you are moving at a rate that your body can withstand for a long period of time, right? This means you're operating with an aerobic effort. But we all experience when you increase your intensity, whether it's speed or force output, you pass that threshold at one point, and there is no way you can hold on to that intensity for more than a couple minutes or so. Well, then you're operating at an anaerobic intensity. This is very important because this is a factor in why HIIT training or high intensity interval training has started to take over. Many people are starting to think that HIIT training is much more beneficial to fat loss, and it's because we are now working with both anaerobic and aerobic pathways in the body. So let's break down HIIT training versus steady state cardio. HIIT training, high intensity interval training, short bursts of high effort combined with low intensity steady state efforts. So for an example, you could choose any form of exercise, whether it's running, biking, rowing, anything. Let's just choose biking and rowing for this example. You do your warm up, and then you do 30 to 60 seconds of a max effort, and then recover with a 2-minute nice and easy effort. And then you repeat that for 5 rounds, followed by a cool down and stretch, and boom, that would be a basic HIIT training session. Now, while steady state cardio is great for burning calories minute by minute, one thing that HIIT has become famous for is excess post-exercise oxygen consumption. That's a mouthful, right? But it's also known as EPOC. You might have heard this called the afterburn. Now, when I first learned about this and when it first got really popular, I used to tell my clients that this was a huge factor and they could utilize it in their body fat loss goals. I mean, burning calories for free in the following days after a workout? Like, yes, please, sign me up for that. And while it definitely is real, and it definitely has been supported by many studies and supported by scientific evidence, I later learned that the application of its use has been a little overblown by many fitness programs and professionals, including myself. In a research review of a 2006 study in the Journal of Sports Sciences, Lyle McDonald found that subjects who exercised for 80 minutes kept burning calories for up to 7 hours, and the total extra calorie expenditure ended up being about an extra 80 calories. We also have to remember that most of us aren't exercising for 80 minutes. We're more exercising around the 60-minute mark, and that would take those 80 calories and make them about 60 extra calories for most of us. Now, this is still significant because that extra burn over time can have some huge benefits. However, what I was taught was that a lot of people burned for up to 36 hours later and would burn an extra couple hundred calories at a time. And while, yes, it probably is possible to last longer and burn for more for some people than others, I think the point being made here is that it definitely is an extra perk, but we shouldn't be using EPOC or the afterburn as one of our main reasons why HIIT is the best form of exercise for fat loss. And which will have a greater effect on your fat loss goal, the 500 to 800 calories that you burn during the session, or the extra 60 to 80 calories 7 to 12 hours following? We just have to be smart on what we decide to do with the hierarchy of importance when it comes to activities for fat loss. We want to start with the huge rocks first, the big players, and then we can throw in the little hacks and the little tricks once we get the other things dialed in. We will go over those big rocks in just a second. Let's finish up HIIT training and finish by listing some of the pros and cons of HIIT training so you can decide for yourself if it's something that you can consider keeping in your training program. So high intensity interval training pros. It's more time efficient than steady state cardio. In a 2017 study in Obesity Review magazine, Vandenberg and colleagues found across 13 different studies that there weren't a huge amount of difference between HIIT training sessions and moderate intensity continuous training, which is the steady state, when it came to burning calories. But the HIIT sessions took on average about 40% less time commitment. So about the same fat loss effect for about half the time. That's pretty great, right? Although it is important to note that this study was looking at obese participants and diet was not controlled. So there were a lot of variables to account for there. One variable that you can think that many don't tend to think of is the mindset of those participants were probably affected. HIIT training tends to be challenging and people just tend to give more effort. They tend to try harder and feel more accomplished than after doing those boring 60-minute steady state cardio sessions. This could have a much larger impact on the science than what we really know about. Just the belief of effort and accomplishments can really be valuable in my opinion. So HIIT is more time efficient with a little bit of extra burn for the buck. Maybe not as quite as much as I had once thought, but still worth noting. It also may blunt the appetite a little bit better than steady state cardio. And it seems that people tend to just work harder during these HIIT trainings. And of course, it tends to be less boring, which definitely helps with adherence for consistency. Now, high intensity interval training cons. It takes much longer to recover from a HIIT training session than a steady state cardio session. And if done incorrectly and recovery is not focused on, then HIIT training can easily become overtraining and results will largely suffer. Also, HIIT training requires a higher skill, and with that requirement, it brings a higher risk of injury. So to conclude, on the HIIT versus steady state argument, maybe that's not even the right question to be asking. To borrow from Dr. Eric Helms, who wrote this wonderful article review that I read, when he says that cardio should not be the primary vehicle for fat loss, regardless of if you're performing HIIT or steady state, truly the vast majority of fat loss should come from your diet. And this brings me to what I truly believe is what everyone should be using for their exercise routines, along with their balanced whole food diet, and that is resistance training. Resistance training is any exercise that causes the muscles to contract against an external resistance with the expectations of increases in strength, tone, mass, and/or muscular endurance. The external resistance can be dumbbells, rubber exercise tubing, your own body weight, bricks, water bottles, or any other objects that cause the muscles to contract. But what does resistance training offer for fat loss goals? Now, if we go back to our list of activities that burn calories, resistance training and weightlifting was way at the bottom. It only burned 200 to 300 calories per hour, right? So you're probably asking, why does it make my number one for form of activity to do for fat loss? Well, we have to remember that when it comes to fat loss, maintaining a healthy amount of muscle mass is super important. When it comes to steady state cardio, muscles are an expensive and heavy tissue for the body to haul around. And when you put the importance on running mile after mile or swimming or anything like that, the body will trade in some of that muscle for energy because the body always wants to adapt to being the most efficient at whatever it's called to do. You may be burning more calories, but you're sacrificing super important muscle tissue in the process. So you will see short-term weight loss and maybe even pretty quickly. But remember, weight is not always body fat. You could be sacrificing muscle as a part of that weight loss, along with your water weight and your inflammation and the other things. Over time, you get less and less calories burned for the same amount of miles run. And now you have less muscle mass, which allows your body to burn fewer calories at rest. I have to say that again. Over time, you get less and less calories burned from the same amount of activity, and now you have less muscle mass, which allows your body to burn fewer calories at rest. This is a catastrophic combination if you're trying to lose body fat. Less calories burned in both your physical activity and your rest. That's the opposite of what most of us are trying to do here. When you resistance train, you're essentially doing the opposite of that. You're building lean muscle mass that is making the body more inefficient to hold on to and requiring you to burn more calories at rest. Now, this is not the main argument for resistance training because this is only responsible for a small portion of the calories burned in the short term. But the list of benefits that resistance training offers in the long term is incredible. And you may not see how it impacts fat loss directly, but all of them put together indirectly and over time yield amazing results for fat loss. Right? Rome wasn't created in a day. Good things come to those who wait. We are in this society where we get that quick fix. But haven't we learned at this point that good things come to those who wait? When you put on 1 pound of lean muscle mass, just 1 pound, you burn an extra 30 to 60 calories every single day. Now that doesn't seem like much, right? 30 to 60 calories. But over time, and with all the other benefits, and you're possibly adding more than just 1 pound of lean body mass, now you're on your way to making your body an inefficient, in a good way, calorie burning machine. Inefficient calorie burning machine. The foundation of your workouts should be resistance training. And yes, you can throw in some cardio or some HIIT to add those other cardiovascular benefits that they come with. And in my professional opinion, I would recommend choosing low-impact cardio, whatever you choose, such as rowing, swimming, or cycling. Other benefits of resistance training obviously include improved muscle strength and stamina. The obvious benefit is super important to mention because just think about what having more strength and stamina means when we put that into your everyday living. You will experience improved independence and performance during activities of daily living. This is invaluable. Yes, you can now move things around the house easier. Carrying the groceries is no longer a hassle. Mowing the lawn is simple. You no longer get as tired walking upstairs or playing with your children, meaning you can play with them longer. And now you've added value in all the other areas of health, such as mental, spiritual, and emotional, along with the obvious increase in physical health. You can also increase bone density, which is super important as we age, especially in females after the age of about 35 to 40. Remember, your body is an adaptation machine. I don't know how many times I can say this. So when you incorporate weightlifting in your weekly routine, your body builds up this bone density that is better prepared to excess loads that you're asking it to bear on a consistent basis. You are no longer as fragile as you usually are, and you're less likely to experience those random injuries that happen throughout life. And then, more important to some than others, is the physical enhancement seen from resistance training. You are sculpting strong, long, lean muscles that just look amazing and that can have a drastic impact on your self-esteem, your confidence, and this is whether you care about your aesthetics or not. Regular bouts of resistance training can also help with improved brain function. It helps promote the health of blood vessels in the brain and stimulate beneficial chemicals inside the brain. Weightlifting can help also improve your balance, your speed, your coordination, and provide an overall increase in your sleep quality. But what I have personally found to be the most beneficial thing about weight training is that I have now learned how to connect and control my body in so many different ways that it's hard to describe. I can access a mind-to-muscle connection that few I have met are able to do. It's an incredible feeling, and it takes years and years of practice. And I know even I, who have been training for over a decade, am just scratching the surface of this. I have come to understand that the journey of exploring what the body is capable of and how in control I really am is way more fun than using external motivations such as fat loss to keep me going. Now, another myth that is out there that I'm only going to touch on here because I know I want to spend more time on it with its own podcast is the myth that women will build bodybuilder-sized muscles by resistance training and look like the Incredible Hulk if they lift anything over 10 pounds. Now, there are only a very small percentage of women that have the hormones required to build muscles in this way. Most women that look this way are taking performance-enhancing, sometimes illegal supplements to look this way. This will not happen to you. I work my tail off daily and for the past 10 years, and I'm a male with all the hormones that it takes, and I still have a ton of trouble building muscle. It's a full-time job for me. Please, ladies, if I could say anything, lift heavy. Fit is the new sexy. Strong is the new sexy. And weightlifting heavy will help you lose body fat, tone your muscles, increase your bone density, and just give you a more empowered feeling throughout your life. Lifting weights is the answer. Okay, so you're bought in. You understand the effects of steady-state cardio on fat loss. You understand what activities will help you get to your fat loss goals quicker. But the biggest question I get after teaching this to clients is, what if I absolutely love running? Well, I totally understand. Here's where if someone uses steady-state cardio as a way to decompress, as a sort of moving meditation that gets them some much-needed alone time, then I totally support that. Exercise doesn't have to be all about aesthetics. It can be about other benefits that it gives. The endorphin rush you feel when you've completed it, the sense of accomplishment it brings, the pride in doing something that maybe you once couldn't do, the discipline required to stay consistent with an exercise routine. All of these are wonderful reasons to want to maintain your steady-state cardio. But fat loss should not be on this list and is not on this list. Life isn't always about staying uninjured and safe. Mental, emotional, and spiritual health are all just as important as physical health. And if you get something bigger out of running or swimming or biking than just fat loss, then I have full support in your decision to continue or not. I suggest if you do decide to continue an activity that puts lots of miles on your body, that you invest in either a clinic or a coach that can help you dial in your mechanics. This will also lower your risk of chronic injuries. I suggest doing self-guided interval training, which can help that metabolic response of HIIT training offers that we earlier discussed, and it will avoid the body adapting quickly to your default intensity. And I recommend tracking the distance that you go and then also journaling how your body feels after a certain amount of miles. So in that way, you can know how much is too much and you can slowly increase the distance over time. This is going to avoid going too hard all at once and then again being at risk for injury. So if after learning all of this, you're still asking, okay, so steady state cardio is terrible for fat loss, but I still have this body fat that I want to lose. I didn't love steady state cardio in the first place. I just did it because I thought that's what I had to do. What do I do instead? Well, I'm going to give you 5 things that you can do to help with this journey. Number 1, increase your daily movement, your steps, also known as NEAT, non-exercise activity thermogenesis, and making sure that you have active recovery days. This one is so huge. I don't think people realize how big of an impact your daily movement can have on your health, let alone your fat loss goals. In today's society, we are set up to have essentially anything we want, and there are pretty much 10 different ways to get it delivered straight into your possession immediately. I have made it a goal for myself that anytime I have 2 choices during my day, that one is easier for me physically and the other is harder for me, I, without even hesitating, choose the more physically demanding option. I don't care how tired my legs are. I'm taking the stairs over the elevator. I don't care how many open parking spots are at the front of the store. I'm always going all the way to the back. I don't care if it takes 2 minutes for me to drive. I'm walking to the store and back if I have the time. If I'm sitting down and writing a podcast for hours, I'm for sure setting an alarm to do squats, push-ups, pull-ups every 30 minutes, and I'm doing mobility stretches on the floor while I type it out. I cannot recommend enough investing in an activity and sleep tracker. I myself bought the Oura Ring, O-U-R-A ring. It's a next level device. I'm not going to lie, and it is a little spendy, but it's amazing. I have no affiliation with them, but I love their product. I wish I could give it to everybody that I train. But if it can't be an Oura Ring, it could be a Fitbit, a Garmin, any of those step trackers or activity trackers that give you a general idea of how active you were that day and the quality of sleep that you got that night. Try not to use your phone because you don't always have your phone, and it's not always the most accurate. Aim for 12,000 steps a day. That's right. You heard the 10,000 steps a day as average, but we're not average, and we're not looking for average results. Aim for 12,000 steps a day and give yourself little goals throughout the day to where if you hit noon by this time, you want to have this many steps. Don't try to get it all in at the end of the day. The goal is just to increase your overall activity throughout the day. Do this 5 days a week, and I guarantee you're going to start to see your body composition change, even if you're training very minimally. So number 1, increase your daily movement. Number 2, along those lines, you need to increase your lean muscle mass by resistance training. Focus on strength goals rather than weight loss goals. I promise you that if you focus on how strong you're getting and how much your performance is increasing, the fat loss will come as a byproduct. Number 2, increase your lean muscle mass by weightlifting. Number 3, focus on the quality of sleep that you get and the forms that you're using for stress relief. We can talk about the importance of sleep and stress control for hours, and we eventually will because they're so important. But if you get better quality of sleep and you really focus on stress relief by maybe doing some breath work, meditation, finding ways to offer yourself self-care and an opportunity just to unplug and get some relief from the stresses that life has to offer, this has been scientifically proven to have an incredible impact on body fat loss goals. What we have to remember is that we are flooded with stresses all day long. Starting from when our alarm clock goes off and we release that cortisol, as soon as we check our phones and we see that crazy thing that one person said that annoys us, and we go to work where we stress, we have our family lives that we stress about, what to make for meals, all the way up to the physical activity that we choose. Yes, those high intense workout sessions are also stresses on our lives.
If we never give ourselves self-care and an opportunity to de-stress, we tell our bodies that we are constantly in trouble. And to go all the way back to that caveman analogy that people like to use, you're always getting chased by that saber-toothed tiger, and that can have detrimental effects on your overall health. So number 3, focus on good quality of sleep, which doesn't have to mean the amount of time, it's how good it is, and then stress relief. Number 4, in order for us to lose fat, we must be consuming less than we expend, right? We have to be in a calorie deficit. However, if you're already to a point in your diet where you're consuming very few calories, then decreasing your calories is not the way to go. I've had clients tell me that they're only consuming 1,200 calories. They're 40 pounds overweight, and they're always hungry. They exercise 5 days a week, and they're still not losing weight. Well, this usually comes because of frequent crash dieting and poor relationships with food. And in this case, I would actually want you to increase your calories a tiny, tiny bit every week. And along with that, you'll have to increase your daily activity, right? We're not trying to gain weight. So if you increase your calories, you have to increase your daily activity, working on lifting heavier and giving just a little bit more each day. With this strategy, you'll be repairing the adaptation that comes to the body with all that damage that you've done to the metabolism. This is actually called reverse dieting, and there's a lot of books on it, and there's a lot of theories behind it. And I am really liking what it has to offer. So if you'd like to learn more about reverse dieting, just YouTube or Google and try to get as much information as you can about reverse dieting. But definitely diet should be a huge focus point on your fat loss goals, and a calorie deficit will eventually be where you want to be to get that fat loss. And the 5th and final thing, lastly, it's important to add novelty once you feel results plateauing. We know your body is one of the best adaptation machines known to this world. So as soon as you find your results are no longer moving you in the direction you want, make changes. Your body is really good at what it does. So you don't have to make huge changes. You can make changes in the frequency of your training, the volume, your type, your rest periods, even your forms of active recovery. What I like to tell people is if it's uncomfortable, you're changing. So even all the way down to the speed of your exercises. I once had a guy that would take classes with me, and he would go as fast as he possibly could on every exercise. And he was really good and really strong. But you know what I made him do? I made him slow down, excruciating slow. 4 seconds on the way up and 4 seconds on the way down. The exact opposite of what he was good at. And I lessened the weight by half. And guess what? He got so much more out of that novelty change than anything he had ever done. So think about it. What are you good at? What are you uncomfortable with? And as long as it's not pain, can you make those changes throughout your training to add novelty? And if you ever have trouble with this, please reach out to me. I can offer some great options and ideas for you. I would be more than happy to do that. So team, I hope that this has been helpful and it's got your wheels spinning a little bit on things you can do to better get to your fat loss goals. Remember that the whole purpose is to enjoy the challenge that is finding out what works for your body and what doesn't work. You want to enjoy the process of just working on yourself.
All right, Dream Team, that's it for today. Please share with me any knowledge, thoughts, or questions you may have on today's topic. I'll make sure to answer and discuss on the next episode. You can ask your questions in the comments section or message me on any of the social media platforms. Also, I would be so thankful if you shared this episode with any of your friends or family that may be able to benefit from today's podcast. I would love it if you could do me a solid and screenshot this podcast and share it on your social media platforms and just write one takeaway, one aha moment that you got from this episode. This will help me know what's really valuable to you, and so I can keep the good information coming. And it also lets your network know if this podcast is worth a listen to them. Thank you so much for listening and learning here with us on the Livin the Dream Podcast. We are so grateful for you being a part of this lifelong learning journey. If you have any topics you'd like to discuss, please let us know in the comments or by messaging me on Instagram at CoachDamian_SD. Be kind to someone today. Smile at someone today and leave every person you come into contact with better than before. Until next time, friends, keep living the dream.